Thank you, Rula. With all the work that you're doing on export assistance and with all the work that we're doing, I think we should have a collaboration between Lebanese and LabTrade, consulting on exports, perhaps. Yeah. All right, how's it going so far? Actually, I want to say that we could not have done this without the effort of the team. We've had some sleepless nights in order to bring this to reality. We have been working on this for a little less than 2 months to bring you all together. Thank you for being here, and I want to give a big thanks to the team. Above all, he's not in the room. Azzat Raitim, oh yes, he is in the room. Our advisor on events management, I would like to give him a big round of applause. We could not have done it without you, Azzat. Thank you. I'm proud to introduce our panel. Arabnet is a leading event, insights, and innovation program organizer focused on tech business and innovation in the MENA region. Now, as we in Lebanon seek to find a place amongst the industrialists, perhaps of the region, and we seek to find opportunity in impasse, tech may be a way out. I thought I'd bring 2 and 2 together here, but before we travel at the speed of thought and dream of taking a break through tech, let us take a real look at the crisis that we are facing today through the eyes of our esteemed panelists, the introduction of whom I'm going to leave to our esteemed moderator, Mr.Omar Christidis, who's the CEO of Arabnet and who's better prepared in Lebanon to engage a panel of this caliber and of such impact. I want to personally extend my thanks to you, Omar, for joining Lebanon's Industrial Parade today and for supporting Lebanese industry through the presence of Arabnet. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me all? Okay, I can hear myself quite loudly. So thank you all for joining us today. It's very exciting, and we have a very exciting panel of industrialists to discuss the state of the market, the challenges and new opportunities that have come about since the crisis, and looking forward what advice they have for industrialists in the room. And it's my pleasure to give you a very brief introduction to the panelists, or at least call them up. They're going to introduce themselves when they're up here on stage. We'll start with Dr. Imad Hoballah, former Minister of Industry and Chairman and CEO of BIDS. Also, the CEO of Itico Pharma. He's now in the pharmaceutical manufacturing business. So welcome, Minister Hoballah. We have with us Anthony Jabbour, Managing Director of Cedar Oxygen. We have Dr. Kamel Abdallah, Managing Director of Vita FB Capital. And last but certainly not least, Fadi, Daou, the CEO of Multilane. And we have a really nice, diverse set of panelists today across industries, so we're going to get a good, rich set of insights. I'm going to grab my seat, and actually we'll kick off, starting with you, Minister Hoballah, with just an introduction in 2 sentences. We're going to try to keep this really brief so that we can get to the heart of the matter. So I ask you each to keep it brief.
If this works, I think I would be saying...
Let's see. Yeah, I think that should. There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Omar. For those who know me, I've been the Minister of Industry during the cabinet time of Dr. Hassan Diab. Currently, I am the CEO of a new pharmaceutical company called Itico Pharma. And at the same time, the CEO of a consultancy agency in the area of production and management and business development called BIDS. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony.
Hi guys, thank you. Anthony Jabbour, I'm the Managing Director of Cedar Oxygen in Lebanon. My previous capacities have ranged from financial institutions, corporate investment banking, from local, regional and global banks. And I grew up and was raised in Australia for 20 years before coming to Lebanon. Thanks.
Thank you, Anthony. Dr. Kamel.
Kamel, please, don't make house calls.
Okay.
Actually, be a professor and currently running a private equity fund investing in manufacturing in Lebanon for the last 20 years in the region, in the Gulf region, national food security expert and MD CEO of large industrial groups in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and now running a large industrial / agriculture national food security project in Egypt to have self-sufficiency there in one of their food commodities.
Amazing. Thank you, Kamel. Fadi.
Fadi Daou, CEO of Multilane. Multilane is a high-tech equipment manufacturer and developer based in Lebanon.
Thank you. So we're going to start the first maybe 5-10 minutes. We want to set the scene for everybody, right? And that means today looking at how is the industrial sector transformed, first going through the multitude of crises that we went to, the damage, the impact, and then coming out of this now, the recovery period, how people have been recovering. If we can first talk about the sector as a whole in terms of numbers. Does anyone have numbers that they can share? Maybe we can start with you, Malik, as you have a bird's eye view of the industry.
Well, let's start by calling me Imad. That's
Okay. Khalas, we're dropping minister, we're dropping doctor, we're dropping all the titles.
Okay. I don't know if anyone in Lebanon will be able to claim that we have numbers. I don't know. I don't think we can. Numbers change all the time, and it depends on whom you talk to. However, I could refer to a statement that was made by the leader of the industrial community, if you want to call it, when he said that the exports have gone up to $4 billion recently.
Gone up?
Gone up to $4 billion. From around 2.8 to $3 billion.
Okay.
Most of those exports would be due to, whether we believe it or not, to the industry. Most of it. Now, I cannot give you it's 75% or 80%, whatever. However, I could tell you that out of that, 30% is related to the agricultural industry, or agri-industry. 10% would be to tobacco and related stuff. 10 to 12%, I mean, I could go through the other mechanical, metal stuff, but I'm not going to do that. All I could tell you is that the new types of industry or changes have gone up to about 12%. Those other industries that they call the smaller one, similar to the ones that Mr. Daou is involved in, we have that, and the pharmaceutical numbers have gone up quite a bit.
Okay.
So those numbers, I should say that they were about 30 to 40% less a year ago.
Okay.
So those are the only numbers that I could claim at this point, and I would say, please take them with a grain of salt. But the direction during the crisis was like this, about 30, 40% down, and now it's about 33% higher than what it was prior to the beginning of the crisis.
Excellent. These are great insights already. We've heard some really specific numbers. Anthony, you also have a bird's eye view as you're a key funder for this sector. Can you also share with us some stats or insights on the market shift?
Sure. I think what everybody knows today is that obviously it's true what Imad was saying, that exports have gone up to 4 billion from 3, but imports have come down massively as well for various reasons. One of them is the depreciation, the problem in the economy, our GDP has come down. The reason why I'm mentioning these numbers, I'm going to put them very quickly into context. Before you had a massive amount of deposits, like you said, you had 150 billion plus funding an economy of 55 billion. Today you have Cedar Oxygen, 175 billion plus maybe another 50 to 100 million through various channels that are financing an economy of 23 billion. So you see the massive need. But beyond this, I can tell you with a high degree of confidence from the industrialists that we've reached out to, they have passed the trough, many of them. So basically because they had to accommodate to the crises, and now that they've accommodated to most of those crises, whether it's the depreciation, the unofficial capital control, problems in the supply chain bottlenecks, today they are on a more sustainable platform. They've deleveraged, we'll come to that later. And because they've done these things, they've benefited from the market dynamics to create more sustainability and produce new products. This is definitely going to help. The trade deficit by default has been reduced massively. And I think with innovation across industry, agriculture, and tech, that I'm expecting that to even fall even further.
Okay.
Basically, in a nutshell.
Thank you, Anthony. I want to, add a dimension to this question maybe and turn it to you, Kamel, which is we now understand this shift. There are new industries that are emergent and that are growing very quickly. There's a substitution of local, imports. What we used to import, now we're buying locally. What are you seeing as some of the strategies that have shifted in terms of the industrialists themselves? How have they shifted, whether what they're producing or how they're producing, or what they're exporting, how they're selling? How have they pivoted to respond to the crisis? And we'll ask you that as well, Fadi, just after Kamel.
My quick comment on this إنه رب ضارة نافعة بموضوع الصناعة. Before the crisis, every person, every college student, every person with wealth يحكيك إنه والله قد إيه بيطلع لي فايدة وقد إيه رح تطلع لي فايدة. Government was crowding out everybody, especially the industries. تروح تقول له لحدا ولا فوت بمشروع صناعي رح تربح 6% أو 4%. بقول لك لشو أنا قاعد بالبيت وعندي 13% فوائد من سندات خزينة. فالقطاع الزراعي والقطاع الصناعي كان in a way crowded out completely. والأصحاب الصناعيين بطلوا يحطوا مصرياتهم وقتها بالصناعة يعني no new equipment, no capex, no investments because the returns weren't as interesting. بعد الكرايسيس أولاً صار واضح إنه البلد ما في يعيش على imports. قنية البريعة شوية قد معاش موظف يعني. you have to have import substitution. وهذه مشاكل واجهناها وشفناها ببلدان اشتغلنا فيها زيمبابوي وغيره اللي صار عنده زاد تضخم. تاني شيء فرص الاكسبورت زادت لأنه competitive pricing or costing for a while, for a year or two till now, is now we are competitive and that gives us ability to export another something. فهول on the positive things. وبذات الوقت as somebody was mentioning, it's your expression, I'll leave it to you, about our expertise in dealing with these crises. بس اللبنانيين معودين يتحركوا بسرعة. That's something that's critical when you are in a turnaround situation. Our biggest challenge will continue the issue of no straightforward, simple pricing, costing. لأنه كل يوم ساعة بيطلع الدولار ساعة بينزل. كيف بدك أنت تقرر السعر؟ سعرته بهلا $5 صار ب30,000 رجع نزل السعر بدك ترجع توطي سعر بضاعتك ولا لا. It's a major challenging issue, costing and pricing formulations.
وهلا حنرجع على موضوع الchallenges. بس I wanted to just quick follow-up question. We understand that there's a lot of import substitution going on. Is this profitable for the industrialists?
Yes.
Is the margin good? يعني لأنه we are talking at the end of the day about substituting in order to serve a market and a consumer that has less power to spend than they did before.
شوف the challenge إنه من قبل دائما إنه اللبناني when it came to brands يعني بحب الأجنبي كتير إنه كل ما يغلى سعره anyway أحلى وكل ما تكون البراند أحلى. The reality of the matter إنه حلاوة post crisis إنه صار في تواضع at every level بلبنان including appreciating the key things they want in a product. بده quality أو بدها quality بدهم consistency غير الكواليتي مش اليوم بضاعة منيحة وبكرة ما منيحة فquality مع consistency وبدهم service. And these three areas the Lebanese can give. You could have Lebanon we don't have a human error we could have system errors. بالإندستري هن أكثر ناس ضبطوا السيستمز تبعهم يعني الإندستريست والزراعيين. ومن هالناحية we are very optimistic and positive إنه we will address those. خصوصاً إنه اللبنانيز كونسيومر صار عنده شوية تواضع من ناحية بماش الأجنبي واللي عيونه زرق والمنتج اللي عيونه زرق كتير أهم من any other. بنات عيونهم زرق ما قصدي شيء بس إنه that's it.
Great, thank you. Fadi.
So first on the market we're in. We're in the high-tech industry, primarily focused on the semiconductor market, as well as the data center infrastructure. Our TAM, or addressable market, is huge, talking hundreds of billions of dollars. The growth in our market segment is in the double digits, around 20-23%. Our company has grown. Again, we're not on the investment side, or infrastructure, or design, or consulting. We're primarily an industrialist. We're building high-tech equipment. We export on weekly basis upwards of 5,000 high-tech items from Lebanon that we export. Our market has grown. I guess the natural growth is over 20%. We've exceeded a 50% growth year on year for the past few years. So we're growing. And although in the world, in the market, everyone talks about a recession, in the high-tech industry, in the IT sector, we do not see that yet. We see continued growth. And I believe there's a huge opportunity in Lebanon for value creation, job creation, both not only on creation, creativity, innovation, development, but also for the first time on in the industrial sector.
Thank you, Fadi. And I wanted to just have a quick understanding, and from you, have you seen a shift in other industrialist strategy? Have you shifted your strategy in terms of who you sell to or what you sell as a result of the crisis in Lebanon, or steady as it goes, the opportunities here, you're continuing in that path?
We are growing. We continue to grow. We continue to invest. One thing that we've done is we've invested in a backup facility in Dubai for manufacturing.
Okay.
Primarily, we consider it more as an insurance policy because we need to mitigate the risk, the country risk, and we cannot stop or prevent our customers from not having our products available.
And this is running in parallel?
It's running in parallel. It's primarily a backup strategy, so we're running at low capacity in Dubai. As long as things are running in Lebanon, we're still investing and scaling in Lebanon. Primarily, it's only insurance policy, or people call it belt and suspenders.
Okay, great. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I think we started to touch base on it, what are some of the key challenges that are still facing the industrialists? We are seeing an increase in demand, we're seeing a growth in the sector, but some things are still roadblocks, right? And maybe this time we'll go the other way around. Fadi, we'll start with you. What do you think some of the key challenges are? And I'll throw a few out for us to keep track of. And audience, you're going to have an audience role in this. At the end of this, I'd like to ask you to raise your hand for what you think are the #1 challenges facing industrialists. But first, we're going to hear from our panelists some of the things that we think could be challenges: capital, regulations, access to markets, talent, infrastructure. Would love to hear what you think are the key challenges.
We have as Lebanese, black belt in crisis management. So anything that we are able to address, we have addressed. Talent, we've set up an applied training center, and we're investing heavily in raw talent and education, and we're building up tens of people a month. So we're able to hire, so that's not an issue. On the energy side, of course, it's a challenge. We've had to buy sufficient diesel, and we're completely off the grid. We're installing solar. In our market segment, we're not as heavily reliant on energy. So we have maybe 600 kilowatt of solar, and we're sustainable and we're sufficient. The challenge that we face in our market segment is logistics. It's the #1 problem that we've had to deal with, and we're able to survive around it, but the opportunity for the country to build up a high-tech industry sector can bring hundreds of thousands of jobs if we can create that many capacity, provided we deal with the logistics issues. So this is the #1 challenge. I'd be happy to go into further detail about it. Primarily, a key character in our industry or in our segment, things need to move very quickly. Logistics, we bring things via courier, via DHL, FedEx, etc. It's 3 times or 2.5 times more expensive to ship things into Lebanon.
3 times more expensive.
2.5 times on average sustainable throughout our various operations. Again, we have operations throughout the world, but logistics cost in Lebanon is extremely high. Second element is the factor of time. Every time we have items that are coming to Lebanon to be reworked and shipped out, we go through customs. And that is best way to describe it is a nightmare. Mgharet Alibaba. Hope none of you have to deal with that, but it's the biggest challenge. Once we address that, we can create thousands of opportunities. I want to take one further point, especially from a macroeconomic point of view. As you see and what we see in the world today, there is a bipolarization of the world between a China pole or US pole. Many companies, a lot of the Intel, Amazon, Google, and everyone else in the high-tech industry are being forced to implement a China +1 industry, which means I need an alternative to China, find another location to put your factories outside of China. So at that level, there is a tremendous opportunity to open up our market, not our market rather, but our infrastructure, so we are able to attract these multinational companies. An example, everyone in Guadalajara is working in high-tech manufacturing as a backup for China. Vietnam is booming. The engineers in Vietnam are getting a lot more money than they get in Lebanon. I'm talking Vietnam. So there's an example about Viet Cong. The engineers there get a lot more money than Lebanon. Of course, India's become, they earn a lot more money. So this industry segment is growing. If we address our #1 challenge, which is the infrastructure, or not the infrastructure, apologize, the logistics, we can create tremendous amount of opportunities. This is in summary.
Thank you, Fadi. And I'll comment on one thing, because talent for you, what you did say is you're training your own talent. So this is one of the ways you've already mitigated potentially a challenge that you had in the market. Kamel, please.
So the question was about the challenges.
Yes, correct. Yes, the challenges. And the next thing we're going to talk about is opportunities.
Right.
But
I'll agree with the first one being energy. كلفة الطاقة بلبنان بطل في كهرباء. كل المصانع صارت شغالة على الديزل. كلفة الطاقة عم تكون حوالي 19% من your total cost. Unheard of in any country in the world. ولا صناعة بتهدي على 19% كلفة الطاقة، عادة 3%. The second will be logistics. اللي كمان we confirm it. Lebanon اللي كان دايما بيوصل الشرق مع الغرب ودي السودان من أغلى المحلات especially post COVID أغلى المحلات تفوت والظهر. And related to this كمان it was mentioned التحدي الكبير لنا نحن عايزين كثير وراء من الدولة، من وزارة الصحة، وزارة الصناعة، وزارة الاقتصاد. وأنا بفهم الموظفين فيها، بس بتروح أو مضربين أو مش مضربين، أو بدنا نعمل واسطة نلاقي مندوب لحدا يروح لعنده على البيت يجيبه ويرجع يرده للشخص. This has been a challenge. Lastly, it is challenge بس عم يخف شوي عقلية إنه كلمة الاستفادة بلبنان، كل واحد بحب يستفيد أو at least a lot of people do، وما بحبوا يستفيدوا بشغلهم، بحبوا يستفيدوا بشغلهم بلس غير شغلهم يعني. بس هاي الحمد لله عم بتخف كتير، وي نوتس عم بتخف، بمعنى صار الواحد جاي يشتغل شغله، be productive, get his or her money من شغلهم، وما يفكر إنه والله قاعد عم يشتغل صناعة، he's the export manager بس كيف فيني استفيد، I'm the procurement manager بس كيف فيني استفيد. The good news إنه هالسنة ونص خفت كتير and we are optimistic إنه راح تخف completely إن شاء الله.
Fascinating. I mean, I think you both touched on the same topic in slightly different ways. One is تبع الcustoms بده يستفيد، وأنت عندك تبع الموظف بده يستفيد. The kind of mentality around, I don't know, I don't want to say corruption, but finding a benefit that is a consistent challenge. Before we go to the rest of the gentlemen, a quick question to the audience. How many people experience what Fadi was talking about, that shipping cost is extremely high, something like 3 times what it costs for other markets? If you raise your hand, people are experiencing this. And what Kamel experienced, which is that electricity represents 20% of cost base for manufacturing. Okay. So a little bit less of you are experiencing that same exact challenge. Anthony, we're going to keep moving with you. Some of the challenges that you see.
Yeah, just to move on. I mean, I would like to say something in relation to the energy, and then we move on to 2 other things. Look, we finance at Cedar Oxygen. Our minimum tickets are $200,000 and above. There's a lot of companies where we talk about 20%. For some companies, it's actually more. And this energy bill has become an existential problem for some of these smaller and micro companies, okay? So basically, our pockets, our minimum tickets are $200,000. We are considering a way forward where we can allocate a certain amount for these smaller pockets. The thing is, a lot of these are SMEs, great companies, great initiatives, and like I said, energy might become the ultimate game breaker for them. And that's something that needs to be addressed. I think beyond this, look, when it comes to talent, I think what needs to be said here, and this is something, talent, if today you want to replace somebody, our problem is in Lebanon, like we were talking prior to coming into this meeting, it's not always the issue of money that forces people to leave. Today, if you have money, you can't get the best healthcare. Even if you're making $1 million a year, you can't get the best healthcare as you used to be able to get. So that's one of the things we need to work on. But on that particular issue, if we can retain the talent like Fadi is saying, we're a 4.5 million population. We're not Egypt, we're not 100 million people. We have the talent, we have the talent pool. If we can just keep our people here and keep them in the rural areas, we are going to go a long way to rebuilding this country. I think one other challenge that I need to mention here, besides the supply chain bottlenecks that a lot of the companies are facing, is the export markets. A lot of the companies, like I mentioned earlier, they've adopted import substitution and they're fully automating their business lines through their own cash or through our cash. And we've seen it, we've created that impact. But what I can say is that it's still not easy to open those markets up for these clients. We're working with the likes of UNDP, Fair Trade and others, and we're broadening our remit in order to address these. We'll get to the opportunities. But opening access to markets for industrialists, I think, should be one of the key strategies of everybody in the private and public sector going forward in the coming year.
Great. We're going to go back to the audience here for a question. Okay, I'm going to give you one of two options. The first option is talent is leaving and I can't keep them because of salaries. And the second option is talent is leaving and I can't keep them because quality of life in Lebanon is no longer good. You have to choose one, which means I want you to say, which do you think is really the driver? Is it that we can't afford to pay, or is it quality of life? So for people who think it's the salaries is the key issue, please raise your hand. For people who see it's quality of life, people don't want to still stay in Lebanon, raise your hand. Okay, so we see a significant shift for the second answer. Unfortunately means that even if we can pay, some of us are losing some of our best talent simply out of our control totally. Imad, would love to hear your thoughts on the challenges as you see them, both now from your experience as an industrialist and from before.
I agree with everything that was said. The only thing I want to highlight is the fact that those challenges are different for different industries, different for different areas, different for different industrialists. So for example, the energy problem could be a major problem for those industries that are heavily dependent on energy, on power. Whereas if it is not, it's not going to be the major issue. The range could change between 7% and 35% dependency on power. So the more dependency on energy, the more of a problem it is for you.
Like Kamel was saying, trying to set up a glass factory is impossible because to keep a furnace going at the temperature needed 24/7 is impossible. That's why we don't have a glass bottle manufacturer in the country.
So that's why we have some of the issues that will continue. So we have a long list of issues as to what the challenges are. The issue of corruption, believe it or not, is one that we should not underestimate at all.
Yeah.
You know, the issue of the so-called istifade. You know, ضبط حالك, دبر حالك, بدك تدبره. I see a big issue, and I'm not going to apologize to anybody. 95% of the people have accepted that culture. The industrialists in general have been forced.
You don't agree with Kamel that it's reducing this culture of corruption?
I don't.
Okay.
I believe 95% of the people have succumbed to the fact that yes, it's okay, I'll do this to get my business going. We have a system issue at the heart, at the center of it. You know, now we are benefiting from changes, from the lower salaries, lower compensations. We're benefiting from different variations in the system here and outside. The changes that are going between
arbitrage.
Arbitrage. So
arbitrage.
We're benefiting from it.
The nice way that financial people call making money off of loopholes.
You know, or even our industries are growing, benefiting from something like this. But unless those that are in power start believing what they say, not just say something and do something else. If we do not change the strategy of this country, the vision of our economy, the economic vision of Lebanon, if it doesn't change, all of this will come to a point where it plateaus and it goes down. Our biggest challenge is a system that supports, looks at the industry, at production, at the heart of it, as the driver. because eventually,
you were
what
the
are
minister.
our objectives? Yeah, what our objectives should be?
Yeah.
Our objective should be produce more, export more, import less, get more money into the country, improve the, the number of, increase the number of job openings, hire more people, better quality of life. That's not going to happen with what's going on now. We're going to hire 100 here, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, but eventually we're going to plateau unless we have people who do not need to be a minister that doesn't have to be feeling good just because he reduced the generic ala sudden. It's not supposed to be this way. The system should be allowing it. There should be industrial zones where we have benefits. There should be areas where the platform allows it. There should be areas where the infrastructure is provided. This issue with the export, this issue with all of that, it's not going to happen by itself. And he could solve it his way, he could solve it his way, she could solve it her way, but it's not going to be resolved unless it's done at the system level. So the biggest challenge is our system at this point. And I could go into more details for these things.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask a quick question to our audience, and I wanted to see if you agree corruption is on the rise or corruption is on the decline. Raise your hand if corruption is on the rise. Raise your hand if corruption is on the decline. Okay. Okay, so unfortunately, most people agree with you, Imad. Do you want to comment on this? And we do have a question from the gentleman here. Yeah, it's out of the structure, but I wanted to make sure that we ask you.
My name is Dr. Nasib Fawaz. I'm with the Lebanese International Business Council. You have covered a lot of territory, which is great. I want to mention that the brain drain of Lebanon is the most we export now. We export the brains more than anything else. And we export them because we cannot afford to pay them. People cannot live on the Lebanese salary anymore. We have to pay more to compete with other countries. Otherwise, you're going to lose all your young people. We have young people, they go everywhere, not only Dubai and UAE, they're going to France, they're going to Romania, they're going to Bulgaria, they're going to everywhere. So this is a very important thing that you have to take care of. One thing, export, of course, shipping is important, product is important. What's important that we haven't touched on is finance. How do you finance exports? People want to ship products, but they cannot afford to ship it. So you need to have finance, export financing, like countries have it. You go to Germany, to Italy, United States, everywhere, they finance your export. They not only finance your export to help you with cash flow, but they will guarantee your receivables. If I make a shipment, example, Saudi Arabia, and they don't pay me, I pay 1% insurance with an insurance company, and that insurance will pay me back. I encourage you. They encourage me to finance. They help me to finance the customer. I can give them 120 days, 180 days, because I guarantee I get my money. What are you doing as finance company? What is the government is doing? What are these ministers are doing to go out and help the export and help our younger people to do that? This is very important that we have to start thinking about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're definitely going to address this. And I wanted, because actually no one really mentioned the problem of capital on the panel in terms of one of the top challenges. Okay, everyone seems to want to answer this question. So, but
comment on corruption.
Okay, I'm going to start with Kamel, then I'm going to go to Anthony, Fadi, and then back to the minister. Anthony, I'm having him because he's the funder, so he should really answer this.
I'll leave finance to Anthony. Let me go back to corruption.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a base point. كوكاكولا لبنان اللي أنا كنت chairman تبعها كان فيها 350 موظف، هلا فيها حوالي 50 60 doing the same work, which is similar لكوكاكولا عمان or Coca-Cola الأردن. Before we had to staff so many people due to influences, political pressure, what have you, واسطات وغيره. That gives me an idea about what's happening to corruption in Lebanon. Corruption in Lebanon كان في funding له يلي هن directly or indirectly أموال مودعين، الدولة، البادجets, what have you. All of this is gone. So that's gone. The second thing that's happening, people are now humble. برجع بقول الحمد لله رب ضارة نافعة صار في تواضع صار الواحد to export he needs to have a competitive cost, competitive price. You can no longer afford to pay either for corruption or to pay extra things that they don't get. As a result, I believe most people are now much more grounded, and I believe, and again كلمة believe هي الكلمة الصح يعني مؤمن ليس not based on data ولكن على إيمان بلبنان. الصناعي بلبنان هلا هو شخص مؤمن أكثر ما شخص عم يدرسها دراسة علمية. ليه؟ في وضعين، الوضع العلمي جاي الوضع سيء جدا بده يتحسن إذا عملناه مزبوط with the system if we remove the system error. الوضع الثاني أكيد نحن إيمان عندنا ولا كلنا قاعدين برا اللي بدنا نكون هون. So back to the issue of corruption. I think if you study corruption around the world, we hit the worst point and now we are starting to get better. الإنسان اللبناني بعقله صار less suspect قصة الاستفادة ويعرف ما بتوصله. دولة الحمد لله بطل في عندها مجال كبير لترجع لضلها تسحب ناس على الكوربشن. صار مع الأشخاص الكبار ومعالي موجودة، احنا له معالي for a second. صار حتى أي معالي أو أي أصحاب السمو أو اللي هيك بيعرف إنه إذا في صار كوربشن الناس بطلت تستحي. فاز ريزلت صاروا كل العالم يتواضعوا شوي ويعرفوا انه لا there's a limit والناس شبعت وراح تعمل رياكشن. That's my personal view, not a political speech, but that's my personal view.
Look, fair enough. Certainly, I believe this is a strong, at least, belief and value that you have, Kamel. I think it clashes a little bit with the experience on the ground of some of our audience, but I also understand maybe a different angle of corruption which you're mentioning, which is, let's say, efficiency and work ethic. And now people have to work harder. They understand that they need to work harder to keep their jobs. Maybe this is also at play here. But I love the sentiment and I encourage it. I will move to Anthony. Anthony, just to discuss the funding.
Okay. Look, just a quick point. On the before I get to the finance, a number of industrialists in the last 3-4 weeks that I've met have said to me a common theme, 3 of them at least, and they're very big industrialists. They said to me, Anthony, it's cheaper today to retain my top talent than it is for me to get somebody who's very qualified from another company, train them with me, and pay them a higher salary. So a lot of them are actually opting, even if they have to pay 30, 40, 50% extra, in fresh, retain that talent, keep them in at certain levels of experience, keep them there, as opposed to just letting them go, whether they stay in the country, go to another job, or travel. على موضوع الفاينانسينج.
Yes.
نحن we have I'm just going to just briefly touch on what I presented. We have $175 million. The money is with us as Cedar Oxygen Fund in Switzerland and in a company registered in Luxembourg. Okay? We are lending only to Lebanese industrialists across 3 verticals. Lebanese industrialists, only Lebanese industrialists that want to buy raw materials. We prefer exporters. We have no problem with clients that sell, industrialists sell locally. We also finance renewable energy and CAPEX, machinery. The reason why we finance CAPEX and renewable energy, because as we evolved, we added those verticals because of the need of the industrialists. On the issue of the exports, a number of our clients, they assign the proceeds of the exporters to our account barra. So that's one of the requirements of those exporters. Moreover, at the beginning, at the outset, we approached a number of insurance companies. We adopted the ecosystem. We went in and we discussed it with companies abroad and companies here. We always required a fronting in Lebanon. Now, the experience wasn't that great, to be honest, simply because the volumes, this wasn't a practice that was broadly adopted when the banks were in play. So it was something that was relatively new, okay? So what we decided to do was take it upon ourselves, because the framework that we have is governed by English law from a legal document perspective, and we took collateral under English law. That gave us the comfort that we need. But that said, it's like, for example, as a foreign institution, it's like any foreign institution lending to a Lebanese company in Lebanon. وإذا بدك أقرب من هيك مثل فروعة البنوك اللبنانية بفرنسا إن كان عودة، فرنسا بنك، بلوم عم بيدينوا الشركات اللبنانية بلبنان. بس beyond that, and this prevents us under an English law framework حدا يروح يحط إيداع عند الكاتب العدل أو يدفع لنا بالدولار. أوكي بس تنوضح الفكرة. نحن عم نمول الصناعيين اللي عم بيصدروا وعم بيبيعوا بالسوق المحلي.
Anthony, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I just got that we have less than 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to shift us to our last question. I'm going to do one thing. If you guys want to touch base on the previous one in this, that's okay. I'll just say one thing to your answer here. Cedar Oxygen has already dispersed how much?
$25 million.
$25 million in the pipeline?
In the pipeline, there's more than 75 million.
In the total bucket?
175 million.
There's a lot of financing. Right here, if you need it, talk to this guy.
And we're starting a new fund, just so you know, called LEAF, Lebanon Economic Empowerment Fund. And that fund is going to start where we gradually build it up. Our aim is to get to 500 million within 3 to 5 years. Okay, and it's solely for Lebanese. Just one final comment. When we make a payment, we make it directly to the suppliers. We never give the industrialist or the client the money, just to be clear. Thanks.
Is that a corruption? we won't dive into that. We don't have time. Okay. My last question to you is, I really wanted more time on this topic, which is the silver linings, the sectors that could be promising sectors, the emergent opportunities from the industry. I'm going to start with Fadi and Imad, and then come back to the other gentlemen. And Fadi, if you want to touch very briefly on the other one, but just because we have less than 10 minutes to wrap up.
We do not have issues of salaries. People who are leaving us, they're leaving us because quality of life in the country. We try to address it. We brought solar to all the employees or whoever wanted. We did everything possible, and we're paying net more than they get in either Italy or France. People are still leaving for future of their kids if they have to leave. The great opportunity is, I would say, to invest in a industrial sector for the technology market. Our average
like a zone? Or a strategy?
Both. So we use less energy. Our energy cost is less than 1% of our total business relative to our top line. I suggest we advocate the creation of special economic zones that operate outside the jurisdictions of the government. Our number one challenge and problem in this country remains by far the logistics, which is controlled by government. Any problem that we had to deal with, or any challenge, we dealt with it and we succeeded, except the ones are beyond our control, which are the logistics, which is still controlled by the government. I advocate for one thing, creating of special economic zones, and I do believe we'll be able to attract hundreds of multinational companies. In our industry segment, I get calls every week. People want to augment their teams. They want to create hundreds of jobs. They want to move to Lebanon, but they are concerned about two things. The security situation, which is well beyond our control, and they want to make sure they can bring goods in and out of the country without having stuck by someone who decides on Friday afternoon it's time to do something.
Okay. أنا حسيتك بدك تبلش ثورة هلا فادي. Okay.
So anyway, that's...
Imad, what opportunities do you see coming out of this? What silver linings, advantages do we have? And what industries could be interesting priorities for us?
I agree with what you said. So let me not repeat what you said on that issue. But I tell you, the opportunities are ample.
Okay.
As far as the financing is concerned, we have an opportunity here. But I tell you, there is a big opportunity to work with our people that have the money elsewhere.
The diaspora.
The diaspora.
Okay.
But you gotta have it within a plan, within a vision, and you gotta have solid numbers. And there are many projects with solid numbers. We've been back with the business that we started with the pharma. We also have 5 other businesses that are in the process of starting. There are opportunities in different areas related to, we've seen what happened. We have people here that have worked in the areas related to COVID, anything related to COVID. But those areas will continue to grow in different sections. Anything related to solar energy. That's no question about it. Now, a lot of people are going to argue about the feasibility study, but we could show them the real numbers. It's not an issue. Pharma will continue to be a big asset for everybody. شوية بالهيدا المعدات الصناعية، قطع غيار السيارات، قطع غيار الصناعية الزيوت من جميع أنواعها. So I'm reading some of the things that we have worked on with
yeah, some of the basic inputs to other production processes or tools. Very important. I think you're.
Dalia is here, so even how many people know that whether we have نحن عندنا صناعة المسامير بالبلد, anything related to metal. There are things that could be worked on. المصابيح, المقاييس كلها, المفاتيح, القرطاسية فيها نعمل أشياء كتير فيها. And you know what? Those things that our villages and farmers work on, those small things are big. They're big opportunities, especially for export.
Mooney.
Anything related to Mooney. I mean, you've heard a lot about it, but I could tell you what I'm thinking here, or what I'm saying is, every industry has a potential in Lebanon. We just have to make sure we work on المناطق الصناعية. We work on the legal aspects of the work, avoiding having to pay this and that to move forward. And as far as the financing is concerned, believe me, the financing could be found not as hard as people think, but not with the current نظام المصرفي اللي عندنا.
Okay. And I've tried to avoid too much government discussion because there's not much we can do about that, like Fadi was saying. But Kamel, please. Opportunities, silver linings, sectors.
Opportunities. يعني صار لي بالموضوع الأمن الغذائي القومي أو National Food Security the last 20 years. الإمارات أمنت الشركة اللي كنت أنا السي او MD تبع اكتفاء ذاتي بموضوع العلف. رحنا على قطر within 2 years اكتفاء ذاتي بموضوع الحليب يسروا البقر وغيره. بمصر هلا عم نعمل اكتفاء ذاتي لمصر بالسكر. هيدي بلدان كلها عم نزرع صحراء فيها. نحن عندنا زراعة موجودة. أي صناعة تبنى على الصناعات الغذائية. Small is beautiful. ما ضروري يكون أكبر وأكبر وأكبر. Small is beautiful when it comes to food. أنا من ضيعة الخيام فيها كرمال عين تكرم كل مرجعيون. فيها سهل كبير. أنا كنت امبارح بمنطقة دهور الشوار. كنت بالبقاع. We have a lot of opportunities لزراعة. And then ما immediately وقت تعمل زراعة لازم تعمل صناعة. Otherwise راح يكون عندك food expiry. راح تهلك لتصدر بدون ما تعمل توماتو طماطم بندورة. عمل مصنع التوماتو بيست حتى اللي موجود مثلا بالبقاع. So in summary, I would definitely encourage anybody to think A, small is beautiful. ما بده 20 و30 و40 أو بدها $50 million. Let's find a piece of land, find a particular agri-commodity, work on doing the production or agreement with farmers. في شركات مثل بايوماس بلبنان طالعة كلها شباب. They are all active. They are working with farmers to work with them on producing commodities and build a factory around it. وقت كلمة factory ما نخوف الناس يعني نستعمل كلمة صناعة كبعباع أوقات إنه والله بدنا 20 و30 و100 مليون دولار. No, as long as you think it, you can do it. So in summary, I'm very optimistic. بعتبر silver lining رب ضارة نافعة للمرة العاشر. The system now, we are at the worst point in the J curve. The only way is we start to move up. And there are opportunities. والشعب اللبناني من أيام 1903 و4 و7 وقت كان عندنا مجاعة have proven إنه after every crisis عندنا طلعة شوي نقدر نقلع at least till the next crisis comes.
Thank you for that. Last words, Anthony, on this topic. Opportunities, silver linings.
Okay, look, I want to start, and I mentioned something earlier. Our GDP today is $23 billion. Our GDP before was $55 billion. You bring $1 billion into the country today, the impact it has is much bigger than what it did before. And it goes into the value chain, because a lot of the 55 billion, a lot of it was leveraged. let's نعترف بشغلة. كلنا استفدنا من 1005. كل شخص بهالأوضة استفاد من 1005. اليوم في جزء كبير من الناس تعال لك شو قصدي. اللي كان عم بيشتري بنزين كان عم بيشتري على 1005. اللي كان عم بيشتري شو ما كان اللي تدين مثلا مش بس العالم الشركات that were able to deleverage large amounts. There were a lot of people who had loans, whether it was a housing loan, a personal loan, a car loan. That's created a healthier economy, but that's a silent healthier economy. I think going forward, the fact that we're starting from a lower base is going to be much more productive. Somebody mentioned, I can't remember, sorry guys, but somebody mentioned our feet now are on the ground. they are on the ground. I think we have been humbled, and I think going forward, it's going to be much easier to grow for those that can see this period through. A lot of changes need to be made. I needed to say this because it's an imperative. A lot of the industrialists that we've seen, like I said, most of them have passed the trough. Their sales are starting to increase. But I have 2 words of advice for you. At least from Cedar Oxygen's perspective, today we're financing renewable energy and we're financing CAPEX. CAPEX, if you have opportunities, you're producing new products, CAPEX is a no-brainer, correct? Because it's either import substitution or you're automating your process. It's a no-brainer. When it comes to renewable energy, even اللي قاعد البيت will be like it's a no-brainer. لأنه قبل, with the technology that we had and the cost that we needed to replace renewable energy, the ROI was something like 10 years. Today it's come down for industrialists to anywhere between 1 and 2.5 years. The last thing I want to say is that, and I mentioned this during my speech earlier, is that my ultimate advice to industrialists today, if you want to grow with a vision, whether it's locally or globally, when you're starting local, it's a massive advantage, and moving forward, invest in the supply chain, vertically or horizontally, automate it, and then copy and paste it, whether locally or globally. In conclusion, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Fadi, did you want to say something?
I
Like
wanted
one
just to
sentence.
add
1 or 2, that's it, because I have to wrap up.
5 seconds.
5 seconds,
I
go.
hope we get out of the hangover of the Al-Fukhamsi, because most of the people who have gotten to use the value of Al-Fukhamsi in terms of their worth, in terms of productivity effect, they still believe they're worth a lot more. So effectively, we were not living in reality during the Al-Fukhamsi, and the value of the productive value of our workforce was much less than what they were getting. So I hope we get over the value, this hangover, so we can become productive again.
Thank you, Fadi. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to our audience for being so engaged with us and for a great discussion. And we'll turn you back to Dalia for the rest of the event. Thank you. This way.